could have figured that out, my sister. We're going to start. we have a long-standing relationship, although we just met. There's something historical about this. Yeah. So we're going to start with a brief introduction about who each of us is and what this topic means to us, because we don't want to assume that we all have a shared understanding of what the title of this topic means. And so I'll start out, and we're going to try to be as brief as possible, although these sisters over here talk in chapters and books, not sentences and paragraphs. But I think I'll keep the mic to prevent counterattacks. My name is Warren Simmons. I'm currently chair of the board of the Nellie Mae Education Foundation. I had to say that because the president, who I work for, is sitting right there. But I spent a 40-year career working on education in the United States, primarily the K-12 education system, attempting to close achievement gaps between black and brown and the dominant group. This topic is important to me because it has been ignored in the American education system. The fact the title itself means that we have to understand that there are benefits from the implication of the title is that people have to be convinced that there are benefits of learning from the diaspora, as opposed to understanding that you can't have an education system in a multicultural society unless it takes advantage of the diaspora. And so that's what I want to bring to this conversation and my moderation.
Buenos dias, bonjour, comment ça va, ça passe? My name is Her Majesty Queen Mother, Dr. Dòwòti Désir. I am the Queen Mother of the African Diaspora for Benin Republic. I am also an educator. I've worked with young people from 16 to about 19 years old who have fallen out of the school system and are trying to get their high school equivalency. And many of these young people are, if they don't go back to school, they're going to end up dead or in jail. But I'm also the founder of a leadership program that I hope to talk to you about later, and an independent scholar. This subject is important to me because in my capacity as Queen Mother, a part of my work is to create transnational alliances and do that kind of bridge building between the diaspora and the African continent.
Buenos dias, good morning. My name is Tonija Hope. I am a daughter of the diaspora. I am the great-granddaughter of John Hope, the first black president of Morehouse College and Atlanta University, and the great-great-granddaughter of Ernest Lyon, who was the first minister plenipotentiary of the United States to Liberia, and founder of what eventually became Bowie State University, another HBCU. So I have HBCU history deep in my blood, and as such, come to this work through education to serve as a bridge as well to the diaspora. I am also deeply rooted here in Colombia. I've been working here for at least 15 years in Afro-Colombian communities with students and young people here in universities across this country, but also in Brazil and throughout Latin America, working to advance Afro-descendant communities and serving as a bridge so that we as a collective in the United States, in Latin America, and wherever we as Black people are, can figure out a way to work together to advance all of us collectively.
I'm also going to now ask two people from the audience to just say briefly why they are here and what they hope to gain from this conversation. And so they have some volunteers.
And he left. Okay, hi. My name is Suriwa Lojes. I am the CEO of a space, like a page called Africom. and this is a communication agency, and here we try to create content about our present in different spaces, and still we create different things like content created from Afro Diaspora. And from that conversation specifically, I want to know more about how we can create or to connect our ideas about communication diaspora. For me, it's so important, obviously, to know, or that you know, what is our ways in Colombia about communication, about how we connect, but still for me, it's important to know more about how you connect and how we can create like different relation about our different projects.
Thank you. Is there a second volunteer?
If I may, I have 5 young women I sponsored here,
Mhm.
and I would like to volunteer one.
Wonderful volunteers. And here.
Hi, good morning. I'm so grateful because this opportunity for us is very important. I'm an educator too. I work in different communities, these topics about gender, racism, intersectionality, so I barely know that it's hard, like painfully, so I want to know if we have possibilities to speak louder about how we feel fighting this alone. Like we need to be closer to the indigenous people, we need to be closer to other people in the city, because this is a fight we can take alone, because I feel tired sometimes, I feel so much pain, but that's the thing that motivates me every day. So I want to know if you can help us, like, caminar esto, o sea, like, take this together, like, as a community, as a Latin Americans, I don't know. Thank you. My English is not very good, but I try. Thank you.
Oh, Madam President, I was wondering who you're referring to. Oh.
Hi, Giselle Shorter, President, CEO of Nellie Mae Education Foundation. I think what's top of mind and heart, and where I'm looking to glean insights from your collective wisdom, what's the strategy, right? What's the strategy that gets us to and through mutual aid around policy, politics, and economic development and resourcing? And so how have you navigated, and what do you see as the next jump that we need to be making together?
Thank you, Madam President. Next question I want to ask the panelists is share with me your understanding of what's the problem that we're trying to solve. So the title says the benefits of learning from the diaspora, which presents itself that there's a problem that we haven't taken advantage of those benefits. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve from your perspective?
Some of the work that I've done as a human rights activist focuses on a particular word that is expressed, imposed upon us, and then is internalized by us, which needs to be addressed directly. And that is the issue of Afrophobia, this irrational fear of Black culture, of Black history, of the Black self. And until we address how that system of oppression that is, again, posed upon us as a result of discourses of domination, of laws, of the school system, of all sorts of structures in these societies that we were deported to, historically deported to. We've absorbed all of this, and this is part of a intergenerational trauma that we have that needs to be addressed very, very directly. And the issues of division among us I had a wonderful conversation with my mentees, I guess I should call them, yesterday, and the nature of divisions that we find in Colombia and Afro-Colombia in particular is like, wow. But we have the same thing in Haiti with, she's a different person, there's a different label for her, there's a different label for me, there's a different label for you, all based on skin color, texture of our hair, nose, lineage, etc. There's the issue of race and class, caste, social aspirations that come into play, religion, indigenous religions. Also, those people tend to get marginalized. This is something I saw really at play, not only in my own life, but in Benin Republic, which is where I'm based part of the year. So there are all these issues that have to be addressed and tackled, and we need safe, private places to have these discussions, because we are a vulnerable people, and while we're exposing and sharing our needs and concerns, we can't have other people knowing just how profound our pain is. So that's one of the things that I'm concerned with, and how Afrophobia and this dismantling has to translate itself into public policy.
So what I forgot to say in my introduction is that I am also the director of the Ralph Bunche International Affairs Center at Howard University in Washington, D.C. Howard University being a historically Black university. And so one of the problems that I'm trying to solve for here in this conference, in the sessions that I've been in, has been a very US-centric conversation. I am a citizen of the world. I consider myself very global. And I think that I move in a space globally and I am comfortable. Part of that is because I speak Spanish and I speak Portuguese. So I have an ability to connect with people on a level that many people from the United States cannot. That is a problem. And HBCUs, I think, gracias, are in a position to address some of these issues. I think that we have to reconnect with each other. We were forcibly separated once upon a time, and we continue to maintain that separation, and we have to find a way to reconnect. We need to speak each other's languages. You all need to learn English, those of you in this room who do not, and those of us in the United States need to learn other languages, so that we can reconnect and understand our collective history, so that we can work together, walk together, para que caminemos juntos, right? To address, and that is part of the problem that I'm trying to solve for through education. And it starts in K-12 education, higher education in the United States, in Colombia, in Brazil. We share many of the same problems. And I think that that is intentional by a higher structure that we have to dismantle. Look, we had this breakfast conversation this morning, and I'm just trying to remember all of the things that we talked about. So I'm like, there's so many things in my head. We have only an hour, not even an hour. We have half an hour to have this conversation, and I'm like trying to remember all the points that we were talking about this morning. Like we could literally just have a whole day just having this conversation. And so I hope that we can continue this conversation outside of this space. But for now, I will leave it there.
The sister also didn't mention that we are both graduates of McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota, a few decades or more apart. Yeah, that is a whole other conversation. I want to talk more directly about the challenges that we face from my own experience. So I was born in 1951. I'm 73 years old. My father was born in 1900, so he was 22 years older, right? So I'm actually only 2.5, 3 generations removed from slavery on my father's side of the family. I went to an educational system in New York City that basically either did not mention me or demeaned me, or mentioned me for only 2 weeks out of the year. The topic of the Civil War, that's uplifting, right? And then I was also a product of the media images that I was exposed to on television that had me rooting for the cowboys against the indigenous people and the cowboys against the Mexicans, had me rooting for Tarzan over Africans, had me rooting for the Afrikaners to defeat the Zulus, right? One of my favorite movies, right? Zulu, right? That's a lot of normalization of a white hierarchy that we have only in this country, in the United States, had brief moments to counteract. The civil rights movement, the black nationalist movement, the Pan-Africanist movement, the DEI movement, all of these things existed for only brief periods of time. And so the question for the panel and for all of us here is, what are some of the solutions to the colonialization dominance in education and media and economics that forces us to say there are benefits to learning from the diaspora, as opposed to saying that learning from the diaspora should be the way all systems, all countries operate, because we are who we are everywhere. And so I will now shift the conversation to, what are some of the things you are doing and imagining doing to change this powerful dynamic that operates and reinforces across economic systems, social systems, political systems, and educational systems?
Thank you. I think one of the things that we have to do is to look at the geography of scale, because some of us can only do small things, some of us can do medium-sized things, some of us can do much larger things. We can do things locally, we can do things within the hemisphere, we can do things globally. And by I mean we, my people, left Africa, Dahomey, the kingdom of Dahomey, the kingdoms of Cameroon and Congo, arrived in Haiti, had a secondary diaspora to the United States, and then I completed the circle by going back to Benin, which was known as Dahomey. At each interval, I learned either how Haitian I am, how American I am, how African I am. And every time I cull something new, and I go deeper into myself, into the we. Yesterday I spoke of this notion of mun, which means the experiences. It's a Haitian word with Congo roots, which means the experiences of your own lineage, of your own blood, of your ancestors. It is a morphic reservoir. It is a body of knowledge that each of us has to tap into. And so the more you travel, because this is something that we talked about, the more you travel, whether it's from Medellin to San Andres, or to Colombia in general, to Benin, for instance. Every time you learn something, every time you move, you learn more and more, and you're feeding your ancestral self. And that ancestral self that is replenished, that you give offerings to, give us the strength to do the work that has to be done. In my case, I set up an organization called the Imperial Corps Agoje of the African Diaspora. It is a leadership program for women of African descent, but now for women of color. It is intended to tap into the divine feminine warrior so that you see yourself as una guerrera, right? A femme voyant, a fighter, a warrior, that you know that these models exist historically to be that powerful woman, that you learn to tap into those leadership skills. So there's a spiritual component to it. There is a practical component into learning how to be a better, stronger, more effective leader, one who learns to think strategically. And there is an element of traveling to other places so that we connect with other like-minded beings. We started out in 2023. This organization is new in Benin Republic. I took a group of mostly African-American women to Benin Republic. We were initiated as Agoje. So we are warriors, and because I work with royal palaces, we have the benedictions of those spaces, of those peoples. But then I've also evolved it into a youth program where we work with young people so that they better understand themselves. Men have asked me, well, can we do this too? So next year, I'm going to bring both men and women to Cameroon to visit the Bamoun Fumba people, who are also a warrior people. And in each case, and then at some point, we will do it here too, in Colombia. I don't know where, but we're going to do it here. But in each case, this program has been modeled so that it empowers both the women who are overseas, coming from overseas, and local women. We're going to learn the prayers, the dances, the songs, the war dances of each place. We have worked with the holistic healers of each place. We've worked with the academics of each place so that we're learning about ourselves. That element of education and how leadership manifests itself is there. There is a video that all of you who are in this class should take a look in this class. I'm always teaching, yes. Who are in this session should take a look at it. It was sent to your Hoover space. It's just like, I don't know, 1 minute, 16 seconds, but it explains what I'm doing, because my ultimate goal is to have a brick and mortar school where women, especially women in Africa, because I think there will be more and more of you going to Africa. You come back, but you will go and visit and teach and learn and exchange. But I also think it's critically important that we have a think tank. We have a think tank. We don't have any spaces in the United States. I don't know, we may have some, maybe she will talk about that, emerging in Latin America, and maybe there's one or two in Africa, but not focus on the issues of women in particular. We are the nation builders. We should never forget that. And we are the ones who teach. We are teaching our children and the people who adopt us as their mothers. So it is ultimately up to us to make the next generation a more powerful and more enlightened Pan-African, Afro-human one.
So coming from Howard University, like I said, a historically Black university, one of the things that I've been trying to do there is within Howard to build a space, a more global space, intentionally international among our students, make sure our students have the opportunity to study in another country, learn another language. I try to push that. But also I'm trying to make sure that, so there are between 99 and 107 historically Black colleges and universities in the United States that remain. There used to be many, many more. And I'm trying to, Howard University, not the first, is not the oldest, it is not the biggest, it is the best. But just saying, okay. Anyway, but because of its history, its legacy, and its location in the nation's capital, it also has a responsibility to other historically Black colleges and universities, and I think it's a responsibility it takes very seriously. I take it very seriously in terms of using the recognition that Howard has to convene other HBCUs around particular topics. And for me personally, around internationalization, around understanding the role, the power, the impact that historically Black colleges and universities in the United States can have on policy in the United States, but also the role that they can have around the world as conveners, as influencers with across the diaspora, across wherever we are. So I am having, for example, I started in 2017 a HBCU symposium, initially just on study abroad. Last 2023, when we last had it, it has evolved into an HBCU symposium on internationalization to look at not only study abroad, but also international research collaboration. How do we internationalize the curriculum to make sure that the different global perspectives, the global blackness is represented in our curriculum, in our historically black colleges and universities. So this year when we have it in November, it will have gone from 1 day to 3 days, where we're going to be looking at all those things. We're going to be looking at the different ways in which not just political scientists and language specialists and maybe historians are looking at the world, but how are physicists and architects and engineers looking at the world. So we're going to have the National Association of Black Physicists, the National Association of Black Engineers, National Association of Black Architects. This is all very US focused, but I would invite Colombia to join. Okay, fine. That's one thing I'm doing. That's US, right? That's very US. The other thing that I'm working on, actually with a gentleman here from Colombia, is building an Inter-American Permanent Council of Black Legislators. What is that? This year, for the first time, well, last year, Brazil has convened a Black caucus, Bancada Afro, right, for Black politicians in Congress. First time in the history of Brazil that they have had enough members of parliament in Brazil to have a caucus. This is a country that is 53% Black, and this, in the year of 2024, was the first time that they had enough people to have a caucus. So I was on a congressional delegation in March, and I met with the Black caucus. Colombia has a Black caucus. Members of Parliament of Congress in Colombia, Black caucus. Canada has a Black caucus, and obviously the United States has a Black caucus. So what are we going to do? We're going to convene at Howard University in the fall a meeting of the Black caucuses and any other Black legislators of the hemisphere that would like to attend. And then from that meeting, the goal and the plan is to create a permanent council, Inter-American Permanent Council of Black Legislators, that will convene, hopefully on an annual basis. And I was hoping that there maybe be some of these philanthropy people in this room that can hear me say this, because I'm gonna need them to fund that. But anyway, but the idea is first that we be connected across the hemisphere on a policy level to make sure so that we can share with each other what each other are doing on a policy level that impact Black communities across the hemisphere. So that we convene, we share, we build capacity, and that Howard was serve as like an academic arm of that, so that we can be the convener, but also a think tank, a research space to analyze the legislation that is being born of this body across the hemisphere, so that we can begin to address some of these structural and institutional challenges that we face as Black people. But we have to think bigger than, you know, what we're thinking now. And we also have to be much more interconnected. We can't have arts over here, science over here, policy here. It is all connected, and it's connected internationally. What happens in the United States impacts what happens here in Colombia, impacts what happens in Brazil, impacts what happened in Benin and Haiti and Ghana, etc. And we do not always see that. We think very siloed, and we have to break that. And we have to be much more connected with intentionality. So those are two things very concretely that I'm doing from my seat at Howard University.
Yeah, you can do that. It's okay. Oh, applause. Thank you for that. That was directed at the panel. Next point of conversation is that these two are heroic individuals who use their resources to do incredible work. but they are severely under-resourced in their own institutions, in their own communities. And that structural under-resourcing of this work keeps it from reaching scale and prevents it from being sustained. So say a little bit about the ways in which the worlds of philanthropy, the ways in which the world of business, the way in which the world of politics need to change, and education systems needs to change so that the work that you're doing becomes a way of doing business in a sustained, scalable way, as opposed to a nice little program that we can dismantle 5 years from now when we move on to something else.
In a way, we have to create backward linkages. You know, we have the raw materials, but then we have to create a finished project, a finished product at the end of the day. And the way that has to happen, I think, is in more sustained engagement, individuals working with organizations or organizations working with institutions, strategic public and private partnerships. I had an incredible encounter just yesterday at dinner with some people who were involved in private equity funds. People who, they talk about millions and trillions and billions of dollars, like we talk about pesos or goods or dollars, you know? And so there's also conversation about legacy. So you have this money, lots of it, and you want to build, you've built wealth, you want to continue building wealth, but it isn't enough to make sure 1 or 2 or 5 people or even 20 people become extremely wealthy too. Something has to be set up to understand the broader needs of our communities, because that's where the legacy actually, that's where the hard work is, and that's how it is sustained going several generations. Poverty is an issue that is real, it is hard, it is ugly. And that is something that has got to change in our communities. I mean, some of the work that I've done in the UN, one of the Sustainable Development Goals was to get people from earning $1 a day to earning $3 a day. Ooh, big whoopee, right? But in the meantime, inflation and everything else is going up. You're just earning $3 a day. Has that $3, while it seems like, you know, it's, I don't know, 300% increase in your daily salary, is that going to make a difference if the economic environment that you've got, that you exist in, has gone up exponentially? So we're essentially still staying in the same place of poverty. And so I think we need to look at some traditional models for wealth sharing, models for collective living, models that are not based and steep in capitalist constructs, where it's about me, and how much profit I could make, and flip the ME to WE, we. How do we help elevate it, all of us? Because even if you're making a little bit more money, that still means that you have extra money to invest in your own projects and your own ideas, or to support somebody else. Our entire societies get raised if those of us who have means, I shouldn't say those of us, I'm not one of them. I mean, I have the wealth, spiritual, intellectual, you know, I have the volition, I have the will, the political will to do that. But in terms of the material resources, I need partnership. And so how do we create those partnerships? How do we transcend those class and caste divisions that exist among us no matter where we are? As African descendants, so you could be an African descendant. Anybody with melanin, much richer skin, is an African descendant. So that space, our source, that is the primary thing. That Pan-Africanism, that Pan-Americanism, again, what I refer to as Afro-humanism, where we recognize each other as being members of the same community, but Afro-humanism also means that we understand those who came before us and those who are yet to come, that they too must be considered as we build those bridges and connections to move forward.
Ask the question again.
What do we do to build and sustain this work so that it doesn't require heroic efforts?
Yeah. So, I mean, historically black colleges and universities have historically been underfunded as compared to other higher education institutions in the United States. But they've made miracles happen with the resources that they have had available to them. I think philanthropy is the source of most of those institutions. They were created by, white philanthropists, in most cases, those institutions in the United States. We got to look at that. But I think in this conversation here at this Festival of the Diaspora, I think this is my first time here, there seem to be a lot of people here from philanthropic side, from private sector, private equity, who could make a lot of change happen. I think there could be more understanding of historical and current context beyond the business space of what we are. I think we're in Medellin, Colombia. I don't think that we have talked about, I haven't heard here conversations about kind of what are the challenges and the obstacles and the barriers facing Afro-Colombian population in this city, the history of it, the trajectory. Why is Comuna 13 the Comuna 13 that we know now? What was it 15 years ago? What has changed and what has stayed the same? Why is it this place that everybody wants to go to now? Because we're celebrating black culture, but who owns the businesses in Comuna 13? Is it Afro-Colombians? Exactly. That conversation has not found its way into the space here at this Festival of the Diaspora, and I think philanthropy needs, or everybody here, philanthropy, private equity, everybody that is here, I think we're missing an opportunity to educate each other here in this space and whatever space that this particular festival exists in, because we're not really incorporating much of the historical context, the current context. We are just looking at the present day and what we can do to, and it's great, the pitch competition, that's fantastic. Entrepreneurship for black communities and particularly black women in Colombia is absolutely essential. But why is it essential? What has been happening to get us to this point that this is something that needs to be happening? When, just like in the United States, the what do they call it here? The orange economy? Economía naranja, right? In Colombia is the orange economy, the creative economy in the United States.
Oh, okay.
The culture as commodity is black culture. Comuna 13 is black. People go to Comuna 13 to look at the graffiti on the walls that black artists are putting on those walls. But where are the dollars going when people get there? So we haven't had this conversation. I haven't seen it in this space, and I think that is something that's missing that we need to bring to the forefront. If this conference happens in Cali next year, then there's a whole other conversation in Cali. People don't think about salsa as black music outside of here, but salsa is black music. And so what's gonna happen when we get to Cali? So anyway, I could talk about this all day, and we will, and outside of this session.
If I may say something related to what you said, same thing. It's in Medellin now, but there's a difference if we go into Cali. This conference is going to take place in Kenya next year, I believe. And so it's great. It's going to be in Africa. But I mentioned this during lunch. We're still occupying the same spaces of both oppression and what defines success as our historic colonizers. It's wonderful that we're in a Spanish-speaking African country. We need to be in the other countries where Africans speak other languages, and that there were other systems of oppression and thought informing how we fail, how we succeed, how we move forward, how we achieve. I'm going to propose that we do something in Benin Republic because it's French-speaking, it's Fongbe, it's Yoruba, everything that our cultures represent, the manifestations of our cultures in the Americas, we will find there. So again, this is how we continue making these kind of backward linkages and ultimately break down the stereotypes of Afrophobia that we've had to deal with.
I see my timer is showing that we have 11 minutes left, or is it only 11:16? Which one is that? Do we have okay. So now I'm going to turn to the audience, but I want you to think about the questions you're going to ask, but I'm going to ask one more question to the panel. Well, aren't we doing this stuff already? I mean, USAID, which is unfortunately now being dismantled, funds lots of international development corporations. I was on the board of one, Family Health International 360. There are a lot of work in Asia and Africa. I'm using my white voice. Have you noticed how I shifted that? It's amazing. Can't get back to the black voice now. So we spent hundreds of millions of dollars investments in U.S. taxpayer dollars to help develop these countries. What happened to that money? Why haven't you people done more and accomplished more based on all the resources that we've invested in international development? And philanthropy as well. I'll point to my Ford Foundation and international development. What are we doing wrong? And how can we change it, if at all?
I'll just say quickly, for me, part of what I've observed is that so much of that money is used in overhead. So much of that money is used for administration, and administration for the foreign nationals those foreign nationals who are coming in to do the work, and not enough money is being given to the people on the ground, the population who actually needs the work, that there isn't enough training being done, there isn't enough institution building, enough capacity building taking place within those countries so that ultimately they could liberate themselves of the USAIDs. And so this is part of this structural problem, that there is this dependency that is always there and never enough given to make sure that, we can stand independently on our own and create our own institutions on our own terms. Because USAID, the foundations, as wonderful as they are also, I have to be diplomatic here, also deeply problematic because there's a certain ideological mindset that informs their coming into being and their reason and their objective for being in our countries. So we can work, and some of us will work towards dismantling some of these ideas, but some of us, it's like, no tengo tiempo, right? I don't have time for that. You build your own institutions that reflect your own indigenous, your own native values, things that are in accordance to how your people move, your spirit moves. Because that way, it's like a plant. We're in Medellin, and there's the images of plants, the flowers, the leaves, everything grows towards the light. Create institutions and a way of being that allows you to go towards your light. And sometimes that light it comes always from within. So this is what we have to do as well, create alternate institutions, a variety of scales.
Okay, well, USAID, that's a whole conversation, because obviously it's being dismantled, and there are positive things that AID did, but there are a lot of things that are very problematic about USAID. Did it need to be blown up in the way that it was blown up? Probably could have gone about that reformation in a different way. But anyway, but part of the issue is in the international development spaces and in the philanthropic spaces is a lack of people that look like us. So the the session I was in immediately prior to this one was the Women in Philanthropy session, and it was a panel of 4 Black women who are in philanthropy, and they were talking about that they were, and oftentimes, the only ones, or not enough of them to really have the impact that we need in order to dismantle the things that need to be dismantled. So part of that, especially in the international space, if you roll it back in the United States, and I would argue in Colombia and in Brazil, for example, is our students, my students at Howard University, not having an opportunity to study abroad in another country. So in the United States, 5.9% of the people that study abroad in the United States are Black. I'm scared to know what the number is in Colombia and Brazil, but we know that when you have an opportunity to study in another country and you come back to your own country, everything is different. Your perspective, your understanding of your place in the world, your opportunities, because you probably now speak another language. So it increases your opportunity immeasurably. But only 5.9, in the United States, only 5.9% of us are having that opportunity. So then how do you get into the field of international development? You can't, because you don't have any international experience, and you go up against the 88% of the white women who do study abroad. And so that's why you have at the highest echelons of these organizations, white women who studied abroad, or white men. But it's the white women who far outnumber the people who are studying abroad. But study abroad is just a small piece. It's a stepping stone to all of these other issues where we are not present because we're not having that one initial international experience. And the same goes for us in Brazil, in Colombia. I have hosted Afro-Colombian students. I have made it I have very intentionally worked to get Afro-Colombian students to come to Howard, to the United States, because I know the impact that it will have on their entire trajectory when they come back here. And that's just, I'm talking one trip for a week, changes everything. Okay, we need to have a conversation.
Yeah. Thank you very much, both of you. Need to work on your white voice. And so we have comments? And there are mics, okay. Yeah.
You hope, if you don't mind. As we were talking about USAID and then funding, I was thinking, do we also just need to rethink how we generate those funds? Something I recently came across was 100% for change, and it was people who own businesses, part of their succession planning was, when I die, I want my business to continue, but I want 100% of those profits to go into whatever foundation they've established. So in your work, have you worked with people who have businesses who left, Howard alums and said to them, hey, what's the succession plan for your business?
I have not. But that's the thing, like, we know they're there. But I also think that is, I think there's a mentality in the United States that has come from the powers that be that are telling ourselves that HBCUs are not to be trusted. Black organizations are not to be trusted. They're not going to manage our money well, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that is something we have to overcome as people, as us, as Black people, that we have to reinvest in HBCUs. We have to build capacity at the HBCUs so that HBCUs are managing money well, but that, there might be like one thing that happens that tears down all of the years of good work. One thing happens and it's all, remember we told you that they don't know what they're doing. And I think the same thing is happening in Black organizations because that is what we're being told. You all don't know how to manage money well. You don't know how to do this well. And we have to stop doing that. And we have to reinvest in our own organization.
Yeah, something that you said just reminded me, and this is tied into the question too, about, again, I mentioned the economy of scale. Sometimes the work is personal, sometimes it's organizational, institutional. The issue of reparations. is something that has been hotly debated everywhere. In fact, right now, as we speak, the African Union is convening one of their sessions and talking about the issue of reparations. Now, in the United States, in Haiti, and elsewhere, what is that going to look like? There are some people who say, well, Black people shouldn't have reparations because they're not ready. Why? They're going to buy pink Cadillacs with the money, right? Or, no, we're banning Tesla. And that's okay, you can buy your pink Cadillac if you think you can afford it, if it's gonna make you happy. But what are you gonna do with the rest of that money? How are you going to invest it in, not yourself in terms of, me, but the we, the moon that I talked about. The ancestors who fed you, who boosted you, and those people who are yet to come. How are we going to uplift the community? Have we established a plan that is going to allow us to set up the equivalent of credit unions so that we can all take that piece of the reparations pie if we ever get it? But perhaps we also have to just create it for ourselves so that we do build wealth, intellectual wealth, spiritual wealth, as well as financial wealth for ourselves. And that's part of the deep thinking. For me, the think tanks have to do, the smaller organizations have to do, as well as the bigger ones, such as Howard and the International Legislative, Interhemispheric Legislation Organization has to do.
We have time for one more comment question. And, I'm going to exercise my power. In the back.
Hi.
Oh, we need to go to the other side of the room? Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elena Valencia. I'm from Quibdó, and I have been doing science in technology for the last 8 years, and I really believe in education. My question is really complex, but I think that it's important to try to explain myself. We came here just to learn about the benefits of learning about the diaspora. And one of those examples is the HBCU, and we have been seeing the impact that have been creating in the US. And my question is more related to Colombia. Tonija especially, how we can replicate similar model, because it's so hard that many Colombians try to go to US, try to have access to that focus, innovation, and different ways that you are implementing like racial education in US, but how we can replicate this in Colombia, because we are doing biggest effort just to trying to be in the public spaces, in private spaces, but at the same time, education is the first tool that we have to transform our communities. Yeah. How you can think that we can implement similar models?
First, voluntad. You have to want to do it. Now, I personally have been working with people. I know Universidad Pacífico wants to do it. I know UTC. I've done work at UTC, right? Okay, but there's a lot of politics involved in this. I know that I remember in the beginning of the pandemic, I got on a call with PCN because they were trying to create a Black university here in Colombia, and they are still trying to do that. And actually, I got a call about a month ago because they were going to come, they got funding from the Ministry of Education to come to the United States to do a tour of HBCUs so that they could come back here and build one. I believe La Vice has put the money in to build a Black university here. I don't know if it was in Tumaco. I'm not sure where. I can't remember where. But on the Pacific side, there is a conversation about creating a Black university here in the model of HBCUs in the United States. So there are people working on this now here. So the issue is getting together and making it happen, holding the government to account to say, okay, this is something that you all need to invest in. And this current administration, I know there's a lot going on with this current government, but this is one thing that this government can and should deliver on, given everything that they talked about in their campaign, right? So I don't know if you are connected to any of the people that I'm talking about, but if not, you should be. And, getting support from the Black Caucus here in Colombia so that they can advance these funds from the congressional side, civil society. I think now, right now, Colombia is a time where this is possible. I'm not sure what happens in the next administration. Could be not. You don't know, but now is the time to seize that opportunity and build that black university. And I have people here who are ready to do that. No, it's not, but it could be. That's what I'm saying. UTC there's a lot of political stuff going on, okay? And there's politics everywhere. There's politics at Howard. There's a lot of politics at Howard, okay? But UTC, and what I know about universities here is, especially UTC, which is like 95% black student population. So yeah, I know. I mean, I used to work at UTC a lot, and so if the students ask for Howard University did not used to teach black studies, whatever. That had to happen after protests to demand that this be what Howard University does. It wasn't always like this. Most HBCUs were created in the image of white institutions in the United States, only because we weren't allowed to go to the white institutions. We created our own, but then when we created our own, we were teaching Latin, we were teaching European history, we're teaching what the white school's teaching just by black people. It wasn't until the 60s that Howard students were like, no, this is not what we're gonna do. And then everything shifted. So you guys have to demand that UTC. Now here I am causing a revolution in Choco and Quibdó, okay? But whatever, tell the rector that you all want this. And that should happen at other universities. And I know that it has. I know Javeriana in Bogotá has started a Cátedra de Estudios Afrocolombianos, right? But how many black students are at Javeriana? Okay, so you have all these great institutions here in Colombia that have very few, and I have taken them to task on the Universidad, oh my God, what is the one outside of Bogotá? Very elite. I told the rector, I'm like, why you don't have any black students at your school? You over here talking to me about you want me to send my Howard students to your university to learn Spanish? Why, so they can be with 2 black students at your university? No, what did they do? They didn't call me in to have a meeting, and this is, God, what is the name of this university? La Sabana, that one. The rector there, he's my friend now. But the first time that I like him, but the first time I met him at the embassy in Washington, I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh no, you should send your students to my university. And I went to the university, this beautiful institution, but there's like 4 black people there. And so they called me in June to meet with them to talk about everything that they've been doing since. I told them, you need to start a scholarship for black students at your university. And he did, after I said that. But anyway, all right, look.
Just one last thing. How many of you know that this is the International Decade for People of African Descent? We just completed one, 2015 through 2024. Now we're in the 2nd UN decade, International Decade for People of African Descent. All of these conversations that we're having, I would tie them into that. Make it a global issue. Make it regional. Yes, Colombia is a leader. You have a beautiful black woman who is your vice president. Talk to her, make sure there's pressure put on her, and tie this into a bigger initiative. When you succeed, the rest of us succeed. That's it.
Let us show our honor and praise to these 2 powerful humans. Thank you very much.